Griffiths. I work for the London Fire Brigade, and I'm a Fire Brigade Union member. I live locally. I live at Donington Road. I've lived there for over 20 years, and I'm a Londoner, born and bred in Shepherd's Bush. So I joined the London Fire Brigade in 1985, so I'm coming to the end of my 28th year. So part of me feels quite relieved that I can retire in 2 years' time, because it feels like they really are out to get us. But so at the moment in London, especially, I can only really report back on London, but there is a sort of a national campaign on cuts of attacking the fire service and thinking that we can do without fire stations, all around the country pretty much. So I still work at a fire station. I work at Paddington Fire Station on the White Watch, which means I ride a fire engine for my living, and I'm actually an officer in charge, so I'm the watch manager. So I know, that we are needed. We still go out. Sometimes we're not as busy as we were years ago, but when we are needed, people are very happy to see us. Nobody says that they would rather have threepence back on their council tax than have a fire engine, which I think is, we really do equate to something like pennies. So at the moment, thanks to Boris Johnson, we are under a threat of cuts. Luckily, recently the LFIPA, we call it the London Fire and Civil, no, not Civil Defence, but London Fire and Emergency, I can't even remember what they stand for now, LFIPA. I'll think about it in a minute. Which is our fire authority, have voted against the cuts twice recently, in spite of our Commissioner, Ron Dobson, recommending that we have these cuts. We have to save apparently approximately £45 million. The way we're going to save that money, our Commissioner has said, is by closing 12 fire stations, losing 18 appliances, and possibly 520 frontline jobs, which means firefighters at fire stations. We've never done that. We've never had redundancies. We've fought against it for years and years, and in actual fact we've increased the number of firefighter establishment posts over the years as opposed to reducing it. And the only way we have reduced it is by natural wastage. So the establishment might come down, but it would never actually, made people redundant or sack them, even in spite of Ron Dobson trying to do that recently in our last campaign. But what has happened recently, we seem to have had back-to-back campaign resisting all sorts of things, and now this is the biggest, threat so far. And at the moment, as I've said, the fire authorities met twice. Once they voted against the cuts. Second time they were ordered to come back by Boris, and they resisted again. And then he wanted to take it to the court. So there was a meeting on Monday of the urgency, I think it was called, committee at City Hall, and they didn't agree, but they agreed to a public consultation. Because Boris was going to take them to court. Now, I don't know why they felt that going to court was such a bad thing. I'm not quite sure of the implications of that. So now, what is going to happen is the London Fire Brigade, the FIPA, we will go to public consultation, which I assume, I've asked questions, does that mean if the public say they want to keep the 12 appliances, the 12 stations and the 18 appliances and the 520 jobs, it's as simple as that, we get to fight against the cuts, or is it a bit more complicated than that? Because I remember several years ago we had another campaign which involved a public consultation where we went to meet the members of the public on with fire engines, and I never met anybody that said no. We didn't agree. We equate to this amount of money on your council tax. Have you got a problem with that? No. So, but I don't know what the outcome of the public consultation means. What's its implications? There's a 12-week public consultation, and also following the meeting on Monday, it appears that the cuts that are proposed will be held back for 2013 and 2014. So if they do happen, they won't happen this year, and they won't happen next year. So at the moment my understanding is that we have held back on the cuts so far. So, however, the threat is still there. So what happens after the public consultation, I'm not sure. So I feel personally, as an individual that's worked for the London Fire Brigade for 28 years, I feel exhausted by it all. So I can only imagine how other people feel in the public sector, because we're all under threat. We're not the only ones. How do we justify our existence if we're not going out and putting out fires 24/7 and running out, burning buildings with babies on each arms? But because when we are doing our job, we're held up as marvellous heroes, and then on the back of that, oh my goodness, you know, we're the bane, and we're you know, taking money from the public purse. But the irony is that it is the public purse, and we are a public service, and we do provide a service that, you know I live locally. I know I'm a firefighter, but I always say this to me and my friends and family. You know, we're the one service really where you know you will get a fire engine within a few minutes. If you call for us, we have an obligation to be there, and we will be there. And we don't just put out fires. We do, you know, road traffic accidents. We do, you know, we do get cats out of trees. We do help people get in and out of their homes. We do whatever we can to help people. So I would like to preserve that, and if it means a few changes to enable to preserve that, then I think we should do all we can to prevent the cuts wherever they come, especially for me in my service. 2 years' time I can retire, but I'd like to think that in my more senior age that I can still rely on as good a service as we provide now in however many years to come, and for my children and for my grandchildren as well. And also the other thing is that it provides jobs for people, and jobs just make sense all round, doesn't it, that there is a job out there for people. You know, what we've also done recently is that we're privatising sections of our service. We've privatised the fire engines. We've had a whole big embarrassing debacle about that, where it's changed hands, been sold for threepence. These are our fire engines. These are, you know, I see the people that come and maintain our fire engines, the mechanics that actually come if something's wrong with them. They turn up. 1 minute they're wearing London Fire Brigade uniform, the next minute they're wearing Asico, the next minute they're wearing Babcock. He said, one of the guys said, I've got sweatshirts at home that I've not even worn because they keep moving them. It's madness. I mean, and these are the same people doing the same job, and they're just selling it for, you know, the public purse basically. Our training has recently gone to somebody called Babcock, and I would imagine, you know, there are rumours now that the Fire Minister currently thinks it might be a good idea, and this is what Brian Coleman, our previous chair of our authority, who is a horrendous character and probably still is, you know, said, well, why can't we just sell it all off? And that idea is still floating out there, and there are people, I think, that it would change hands in a moment's notice, and I won't be wearing London Fire Brigade uniform anymore. I'll be wearing London Babcock uniform or something, you know, mad along those lines. And so how do we become a profit-making service? We provide a service, we don't make anything, we don't produce anything, we're there for everybody else to use as and when they need us. And suddenly we're a profit-making concern. So all those things are a great worry. It makes me cross. But, you know, at the same time I still have to go to work, and I have previously been in trouble. So I have to be careful as well that I don't get into trouble again just by promoting what I think is fair and trying to stop them taking us and, you know, shredding us basically for whose benefit, I don't know, for people who are in charge, because whilst they pare down the lower ranks, the upper echelons of the London Fire Brigade tend to have bigger and larger purses that they provide for themselves for the marvellous jobs that they're doing. They reward themselves for selling us off, I see it. So, so that's where we are at the moment. I know it's not great detail. I am still trying to remember what the FEPA stands for, London Fire and Emergency Planning Authority. How don't you mind? But there you go. They're our fire authority. And luckily at the moment, in a way, we have got people on there, whereas the balance before was Tory, the balance is now the other way. But saying that, in the past we have been sold down the river by people like Prescott, Val Shawcross, even Ken Livingstone on occasions, which was very, very disappointing, where they, said yes to PFI. Prescott took us into our last strike in 2002 and 2003, so I can't even just coat off the Tories. So we have to have faith at the moment that we have some, the Lib Dems and the Labour and the Greens, I think, are all voting together, which has stopped them from pushing these cuts through without any challenges, which is what would have happened if we had still had Brian Coleman as the chair of our authority. So a little bit of hope at the moment. You never know, and we hope. We are trying to mount a campaign, but and the stations, I had to write them down, that are closing. There's none in Brent. My one's safe. I'm all right, Jack and Jill.
You can't really close Paddington, as I said.
No.
That's the station.
Well, we are a very big station, and we have 4 appliances, but. So we are a huge brigade, we're the equal of 4 county brigades. There's 112 fire stations. Most of the time we probably could cover each other. However, recently there's been some incidents. So Westminster is one of the stations. So I'll tell you, they're Belsize, which is a lovely little station out near Primrose Hill. Belsize, Bow, Clapham, Clerkenwell, Downham, Kingsland, Knightsbridge, New Cross, Silvertown, Southwark, Westminster and Woolwich. Now, there are also 18 appliances to go. They will go from stations where there are currently 2 appliances. Some will move around, and I didn't know all the details of where they are. But for example, if they lose an appliance at Chelsea, which is the plan, and then you've got an appliance. You've got no station at Westminster, you've got no station at Knightsbridge. Across the river you've then got Clapham. Recently there was an incident at a big house in Westminster's ground. All the appliances that attended there, nearly all of them were affected stations. So nearly all of those appliances that turned up first hand within the 5 minutes or 6 minutes wouldn't have been there. So you then had to have appliances, fire engines come in from the next neighbouring stations further out, more time, more minutes. And those stations are then lacking cover, and on it goes. And so we all know that what our authority is saying, attendance times won't be affected. But how can that be the case if you haven't got a fire engine within the same distance and they're coming from further away? Of course it's going to take you longer to get there. It's just common sense. It's going to take you longer to get there. And what we're doing at the moment within our authority is putting out plans using computer-generated mapping and plans to say, well, if we lose that appliance and we have one go from there, then we'll be able to get there in that time. Now, it's all very well if the roads are clear, or if it's the middle of the night, or all these other factors are in place. But you try getting down the Euston Road in the middle of rush hour from Paddington Fire Station to get onto Westminster's ground, for example, or somewhere like that. We've already lost Manchester Square, which was at a nice central station. It all impacts, and whenever you see any information, any adverts that say, get a smoke alarm, this is what happens in a fire, they develop very, very quickly. They're very, very unpredictable. We don't know, we can put all sorts of plans in place, but the reason we're there is because these things are an emergency, and planning for them, we can plan and plan and plan, but we never know when the next helicopter is going to suddenly drop out of the sky at Vauxhall in the middle of rush hour. Now, okay, or
the next riot.
Or the next riots, yes, or all these things that we like to think, hopefully most of the time, don't happen. But when they do happen, if we don't turn up,